Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on our Consumer Loyalty Report launch webinar. So, I understand there's a couple of us already joining here with us today. Without further ado, we're just going to dive right in. But before that, I just want to introduce what this is really about. So, again, thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Some of us are so punctual as well. So just really thank you for that. So today's webinar is all about our latest 2026 report. But before that, if you are new to Eber and you do not know who we are, we just love to say hi. So Eber is a retention marketing platform with the core solutions of five pillars: our loyalty marketing messaging platform and commerce CRM platforms ready to support your business wherever you go. Now, before we dive into all the juicy parts today, of course, we're all here to get early access to the Consumer Loyalty in APAC 2026 report. And our team has worked so heartily since last year to compile everything that we've seen over the past 5 years, even within this Consumer Loyalty report. And if you haven't gotten our last year's one, I really could assure you that the last year's report is just as insightful as what you're gonna get today. So today's report title is "Retention is the New Revenue," and this is quite the agenda that we're trying to help marketers understand, being in this digitized e-commerce world today, right? Retention is really the new revenue across businesses in APAC. And why do we say that is to really understand what's going to happen in 2026 and even the next 5 years beyond. We really need to understand what happened in the last year alone. So within a look back in 2025 alone, right, we understand that APAC's next consumer middle rose to define growth in 2025. So, what does that mean? The consumer middle class that we used to know is no longer the personas that we used to understand. So, who are there? Who are they today? So, these next consumer middle people are middle income households across APAC and are expanding, and of course, are now the key demand drivers across APAC. So, what do they kind of look like? They spend intentionally balancing price, quality, and purpose rather than splurging randomly. But at the same time, this group also emerges as the middle income segments across Southeast Asia, places like India, and also established urban families in China, Korea, and Australia. So, what these people focused on in 2025 are not just essentials such as food, utilities, transport, although they still dominate, but discretionary spend didn't just disappear, it shifted towards tangible everyday value. So, if you joined our last year's webinar launch, we've talked about how people are looking for experiences more and more, rather than it just being a transactional consumer experiences. And of course, that really just trickled down throughout the entire 2025 alone. So having jewelry for everyday sale, eco-friendly reusables, things such as homeware and lifestyle essentials, as well as home and entertainment gear, are one of the primary things that we've seen consumers spend on more in Southeast Asia as well as APAC alone. So, what are these three forces converging in 2025? First is we're seeing across marketing, right? Acquisition is evolving and becoming more discovery driven through AI, not so much on usual SEO search, even though that is very much still prominent. But GEO is taking place into the marketing segments and how marketers are choosing to market as well. So there's a lot of AI optimization being done across the retail as well as F&B segments, but mostly retail within APAC. The second force that came in 2025 is a strong growth in e-commerce and omni-channel retail. And of course, we're seeing that being driven and carried through super apps, as well as a lot of retail stepping into omni-channel platforms as well. Now, the third force that converged and is also still shaping marketing today in 2026 is customer relationships are moving into always on conversational environments rather than seeing it through billboards. Of course, digital media is taking on a rise, but that also means that your customers can now be reached anywhere and anytime. Now, in our last year's report, we actually predicted a search for businesses to focus on having a retention platform or even a retentive customer journey. Because in 2023, we've discovered that only 7% of businesses were able to get their customers to buy twice. And that was the scene that we were kind of talking about across our community last year. But thank goodness this year in itself, loyalty participation is now mainstream and businesses are flocking into a different direction within their retention platforms. Almost 85% of Malaysian consumers prefer to shop at retailers that offer loyalty programs today, which now means that even in APAC alone, businesses are catering more and more towards the retentive needs of their customers. And this can be so reflected through the program investments that has experienced an absolute growth of valued at 100 US dollar million in just 2 years, right? Signaling a clear acceleration. And within this 100 million, it actually signifies a 30% growth within just 2 years in itself. So there are two trends that are coming in terms of retention programs and in terms of like retention strategies within businesses. And the first trend that we're seeing is that majority of active programs are now app-based or account-based. So manual stamp cards and things that we used to see in the past are being phased out optimally, and retailers are increasingly using people's phone numbers, digital wallets, as well as e-commerce accounts to keep a holistic profile of their consumers. Now, the second trend, which is what we're really trying to highlight, is loyalty today is being used for retention, not just discounts. So, what this actually means, right, is loyalty programs today are increasingly designed to drive frequency, reward repeat behavior, as well as trigger personalized messaging. Now, Malaysian retailers cite retail loyalty members in Malaysia deliver almost 2 times higher lifetime value than non-members, driven primarily by repeat visits rather than just higher basket size. And you can say all thanks to all these platforms that we're using on a daily basis, things like TikTok Shop, Lazada, Shopee, Grab, the Super app, and even the retailers' own omnichannel platforms are really just taking things up a notch. So, what does this really mean for you as a merchant, right? You are in the gold zone in the next 5 years. So, we're seeing a retail increase. So APEC's retail sector overall, including the offline businesses, is expected to grow at a 9.8 rate CAGR. And within F&B and food services, it's marketed to grow at 8.2 CAGR. So with all this incoming traffic increasing, right, what does it mean for you as a business to scale retention? Now, retention is scaled on three main pillars. First is convenience, second is continuity, and third is commitment. So, what does it mean, right, when we're looking at convenience for our customers today? And your goal here is to get your customers have convenient and smooth customer experiences, as smooth as possible. And in the context of reward and loyalty programs, it looks like easy signups, easy program access, and clear and frequent redemption. One study actually shows that if your sign up process takes 30 seconds or more, you're done to reiterate. Because one of these things that we're trying to do is get your customers in the door into your retention customer journey as quick as possible. So one of the ways that Shake Shack was able to do this was by introducing Shake Shack Wi-Fi. So this Wi-Fi, once connected, collected all the needed customer data for them to be able to connect with their customers and also scale that retention journey for them. Other things that customers have been able to enjoy through merchants are things like easy program access that looks like being integrated within their phone wallets in itself. And we've actually did a study where app fatigue is very much increasing in APAC, because on average we only use 4 to 6 apps per day. So your goal as a retailer is really to make accessing and navigating your program as easy as possible. Now, here's an omni-channel business that was able to maximize their customer touchpoints in the most minimal way possible. This is Pet World. Pet World is an Ireland-based pet retail store with 13 outlets countrywide and an online e-commerce platforms. So this means they carry multiple brands across their store. So what with so much opportunity at play, right? Pet World really wanted to maximize what it meant and to keep their customers engaged and coming back for more. So they really wanted their customers to come back to choose Pet World over and over again beyond just values and discounts. So what we did was we spoke to Karen, their regional marketing manager, and learned that for them, loyalty existed only amongst their local regulars. Now that's where the e-commerce game needed to expand for them. And the whole point for them is to run beyond just regional platforms with manual stem cuts. And that made it so hard for customers to know the rewards they've learned, let alone know when each of them is expired. So what Pet World actually did was that they built a dual loyalty program system. Now, one system was catered just to Pet World consumers. The other one on top of that was a layered branding loyalty program. So which means if the customers decided to buy brand A from Pet World in itself, they were able to not just collect points from Pet World, but they were able to collect stamp cards from brand A in itself. So they created a lot more opportunities and layers for rewards and engagement for Pet World's customers. So, of course, the fruits of this entire program was that loyalty now drives 12,000 redemptions per year, with members redeeming more than twice annually on average. And 6% of all annual redemptions happen during their festive period alone. So Karen actually shared one of the main campaigns that they were doing was a year-end campaign that were able to drive 6% of their overall redemption rate within that campaign period alone. So that actually took up a huge margin of their redemption rates. And it also shows how engaging their loyalty program was. So what that meant for Pet World now having a digital loyalty program, it currently supports over 200,000 member base, laying at 178,000, and it turns retention into an always-on engagement channel. So what that means for your customers is a higher perceived value, seamless reward redemption, as well as fingertip program access, which means a better shopping experiences for them. And what this means for businesses in itself is reduced point liability, easier data collection, and faster customer acquisition, which means for you in a sea of competitiveness, stronger brand love. So now we've took convenience out of the way, and I'm pretty sure that everyone has already got a grasp of what it means, right? So your goal is really to get your customers in as quick as possible and to build that stickiness for your brand. So now we've got that out of the way, right? Let's talk continuity. How do we then keep our customers coming back outside of just convenience? One of the statistics that was really shocking to us is 79% of customers actually say they abandon loyalty programs that feel passive or slow to reward. And this was a study done by Bond Loyalty. And one of the things that merchants are actually doing to combat this is using gamification. And we've also seen gamification rising through a lot of platforms as brands fight loyalty fatigue. And gamification is so powerful because it actually drives 2 to 3 times higher engagements versus points only programs. And there's so many ways that you can do gamification, right? You can do it in a physical sense as well as digital sense. But one of the good news is Malaysia's mobile first consumers are very much conditioned to things like in platform gameplay, interactive quizzes, as well as lucky draw, and also the stamp card journey collection system, just like how we've shared Pet World did just now. And one of the things that we really love to highlight was what Harry Singapore took the time to do last year. So, in light of the F1 race that took place in Singapore last year, Harry's Rewards actually hopped on the entire bandwagon and created this campaign called Eat, Play, Race. So they really was able to merge their digital platform into a physical experiences. Their customers were able to dine at selected outlets and unlocked racing challenges within the store in itself. So yes, the customers got to play the entire racing simulation within the outlets in itself. And after they've done so, digital stamp cards are marked for their participation and streaks across outlets. So during this entire campaign, right, there were leaderboards and prizes that drove repeat visits for them to climb rankings. So this was such a great campaign that Harry's actually launched last year. And it's also a really good example for marketers to think outside the box in terms of using gamification as a tool to then engage your customers that aligns with your branding as well. Now, there are simpler ways to do gamification. One of the most easy but also effective way to not just engage your customers, but also showcase your product value is through spin the wheel. You can do this across retail, whether you're in retail or F&B, or even you're in hoteliers or service industries. Spin the wheel is also one of the great engagement tools that businesses are using today, and we're not seeing an end to it just yet. So, as brands deepen their understanding of customers, they do unlock the power of personalization. And what this means is you get to foster stronger connections and loyalty. So, being tried and true, loyalty programs and retention programs, and even your entire retention journey is about building a commitment base from your customers. Because in today's world, commitment is what makes retention scale. So most businesses miss the mark for loyalty programs and their retention programs. But understanding what it takes to build commitment across programs is your key to scaling a program that actually works in today's area. So most businesses usually mark their ROI calculations through payback periods, specific attributions, and short-term impact. But if you're thinking about retention, it is a longer game. But you can also see short-term milestones that can layer, and you can actually understand what builds your retention journey specific to your brand in itself. So looking at things such as referrals rate, retention rate, NPS scores, as well as brand reach are one of the key things that we actually urge consumers to actually look at when building their retention program. But one of the questions that we get asked the most is, do we then build a free retention system or paid loyalty system like others? So free loyalty can work if it builds real habit, and paid loyalty works only if it reflects real value. But most loyalty programs here doesn't fail because they're free or paid. They're usually failing because they don't ask for any meaningful commitment. Now, you might be wondering, what then is meaningful commitment, right? How do you measure the meaningfulness of your commitment? So, I'd say just a ballpark value, right? Commitment is being able to provide 10 times value, right? Through three things: convenience, status, or savings. If you can hit any one of these and you do it well, it can be very powerful. So, what does that look like, right? Convenience, we talked about it previously. Seamlessly accessible benefits is one of them. Having fewer steps is one of them, and also bundled with express pickup options. So these work very well if you're catering to an audience with the on-the-go lifestyle, or this works very well if you really understand your customer's lifestyle and it is very catered to a single niche audience to be able to deliver high value through convenience in itself. One of the most common things that we see businesses doing is using status. So this can go through from your credit cards, this can go through airlines. We're also seeing it on retail, hoteliers, as well as also F&B statuses, right? So this looks like your tier access, your gold, your VIP, your insider, for example, visible member badges or tiers, exclusive member only experiences, as well as, of course, recognition across channels such as in store, app, and online. And third, if you're not tapping into status, most businesses are tapping into savings. So this looks like points that accumulate, free items after repeat purchases, member only pricing, things that are very competitive when you're providing a very value first service. So building commitment levels takes from low commitment to high commitment, right? You have your behavior based rewards, your points, your stock value, your gift credit, your tiers, and your paid membership, which is usually the highest commitment. But we're not really here to say what is the best commitment level, but it is here to just walk you through to understand where you are at in building your commitment levels in your business today. So, if your first layer of commitment level is always the foundational, right? Your goal here is to build habit across online and in store. So, your question here is, can we actually build habits today? Is your business building sticky habits already? Or is there a foundation that you need to lay? So if your goal here is to build habit across online, in store, and you're training your customers to come back without reacquisition consistently, which is the foundational level of retention, you can think about things such as behavior based rewards, like the stem cuts that you've seen Petrol do just now, as well as points, things like that, right? And if you're taking it on the other side, is you're building spend predictability. So this is where your stored value and gift credit comes in. Your goal is to pull spend forward so you don't have to increasingly rely on discounting. And you're also increasing basket confidence as your customers shop and dine with your brand. And last but not least, the higher commitment level is here. Loyalty now becomes emotional. So once you have built level one and two, right, you can start thinking about things like status, privileges, and memberships, because your goal here is to create emotional switching rather than just transactional loyalty. So you are rewarding consistency and not just transactions, and you're starting to turn loyalty into a very emotional and conscious choice. Now, with that to say, the best loyalty programs builds habits that fuels retention. So here's three questions that is really good to answer, right? If you're thinking about what kind of loyalty program and what kind of strategy or campaign you're trying to build for your retention journey. First question is, what am I asking the customers to do repeatedly? Second is, what am I giving them that makes it worth it? And third is where the entire commitment level comes in. Does commitment increase over time naturally? And if yes, how can I feel that even more? And if not, how can I start building that foundational level of stickiness? Right? So, in all, a winning loyalty program and a winning rewards program is very much based on three pillars that we've seen today: convenience, continuity, as well as commitment. All in all, to build better experiences for you and your customers. Well, it is 3:23 right now, and I've come to the end of the launch webinar. And thank you so much if you are stuck to the very end, and we all know what's coming next. So you've unlocked the Consumer Loyalty Report in APAC 2026 access. And we just want to highlight here once again, right? Whoever that has just joined our launch webinar today, you very much get the early access. This has not been made public just yet. And you can go ahead and scan the QR code that you see on the screen right here. So this will take you to a quick form, and it will lead you to a download of this copy of our Consumer Loyalty Report completely for free. So we just really want to thank you for your time today. And also, of course, we are planning and we are coming up with a lot more webinars that are recurring monthly. And it's also going to be short and sweet, like the one that you just sat in today, a quick coffee lunch break webinar for you to just take in whatever you need and to help you establish your brand and business in today's loyalty marketing world. So that's it for me for today. I really want to thank you for sitting in. If you have any questions, you can definitely drop it in the chat box down below. And I will be waiting for your questions. And if not, if you have any other questions, you can always email hello@co. Thank you so much for your time today. Yeah, and I really hope you have a great rest of the week. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next webinar. Bye.